10 Days of Theurgy, Day 2. Introductory Training of Ritual Theurgy, Master to Student, One-on-One. The following is a very special opportunity for individuals interested in Ritual Theurgy to join me and my student Jared Bragg on a 10-day adventure. Over the course of this 10-day period, Jared and I met every morning, where I successively taught him the basics of performing a banishing ritual of the pentagram. I chose Jared because he did not have any background in occult science or ritual praxis. For this reason, the discussions that we have over the course of this 10-day period are simple enough for anyone to follow along. This was done mostly outdoors on the bank of the Snake River, and the discussions are lively and informative, and over the 10 days performed ritual, all captured here. The ritual practices are based on a framework that is a few years older, as we recorded this several summers ago. For more updated rituals and to learn more about our programs, please visit www.divineinfinitebeing.com. I also hold yearly 7-day retreats in the month of September for those interested in a more in-depth but similar experience. For more information on this, again, please visit www.divineinfinitebeing.com. Sponsored by astrologypro.com, the #1 platform for astrologers and tarot readers to operate their divination services. We hope you enjoy this video.
Alright, this is Eddie Paredes. We are here for our second day of 10 days of learning Theurgy. And we here with Jared. Jared, say hi.
Hello.
So Jared's here. He's going to share with us a little bit about his experience from yesterday. It's the first day that he's did Theurgy and then kind of continued on with his day. And, so just wanting to know a little bit about how that made him feel after we had actually left here. And then we'll go ahead and get started on doing more today. We'll just be adding one more. We're going to add one a day mainly. And when we get to casting the pentagrams, that'll be a little bit longer day, just because we're going to be focused on all four, and we're getting close to the completion of the ritual at that point. But today we're going to be adding just one divine name. Tomorrow will be another. So we've done 3 to kind of get started. Today will be 4. Tomorrow will be 5 in that order. So I want to kind of just turn it over to Jared for a little bit, kind of talk about how, his hindsight from yesterday and how his day went yesterday and what he may or may not have thought may have helped or changed anything for the way he saw his day from the time we did the ritual. So here you go, Jared.
Okay, thank you. Oh, what a beautiful morning.
It was nice out here.
My day went good. I went home. I kind of wasn't sure what I was going to do. I have a lot to do, which is overwhelming. And so sometimes I get in this funk where I have so much to do, I don't do anything, which kind of sucks because then I'm even further behind.
Yeah, he's an entrepreneur and owns his own company, just to let you guys know kind of what he does. But go ahead, Jared.
So yesterday, I didn't want to be non-productive. I just had that feeling that I didn't want to be stagnant. I don't really again, I wasn't sure what to do, and generally speaking on a day like that, I don't get much done. I fret more than I act. But yesterday, I had that initial thought, and then I couldn't sit well with it. So I just started cleaning my shop, kind of organizing things, getting things out of cobwebs, really. It was kind of cool. I worked on some stuff that I didn't want to work on, with the disgusting stuff soaking in some cleaning water. It was nasty. While I was doing that, I had an interesting thought, because I was cleaning this machine bottom, and I started thinking about my parents, and I kind of started thinking about the way my mom was and the way my dad was. And I had this thought, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I basically had a thought, because my mom, in order to do things, she needs people to do things through. She does things through people. And my thought was, she needs everyone. I wonder if that's feminine, because my dad doesn't need anyone. And I wonder if that's male.
Well, you could even say psychologically, in other words, it stimulated his vision in a certain way, guys, that he kind of saw pictographically aspects of his life that he saw principally yesterday. In other words, instead of just looking at it from the position of how you may have on any particular day, you saw principles involved, right? I would say, in my opinion, it was, for example, women in general, this is just a psychological factor, more interested in people than men are, right? And so they do work through people. They tend to gravitate to specific people in things that they get involved
Is that why
in.
they're encompassing?
So that's one of the reasons I would say that expression of that all-encompassingness seems feminine.
The womb.
Yeah, exactly.
It includes everybody.
100%. Just realize that you always have to look at the male factor within that too. Like your mom, I know your mom, and she's very active, you know what I mean? And so she's very communicative. She has a certain level of maleness to her as well, because she just, she's in with everybody. She knows everybody, you know what I mean? She's kind of an extrovert in that way, right? But she does it, just like you're saying, in a very feminine way, meaning instead of being masculine about it and doing it per self, she's looking to leverage, right, what other people are capable of doing.
Okay.
So my only point is that your view into that principle in that particular way was valid, you know what I mean? As far as what Theurgy can do for you in an alignment later, it helps you start looking at things more principally, which is what you're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yes, to a degree on that. So anyways, thank you, Jared. We're again, if you guys have listened to in what we did yesterday, then you're already kind of caught up on the fact that this can go overboard. And we end up talking too much and speaking too much about principles. Now, yesterday I really wanted to do that anyways because it was kind of an introduction. So this time we kind of got that introduction out of the way. And now that we've kind of done that more, I would say, kind of creatively, I'm going to read to you. And guys, if you're on my website right now, you may be reading this. It may be a bit modified, probably going to be close to the same thing, but this is on the Theurgic ritual of the pentagram, an article that I wrote that actually has the entire pentagram written out. And so I'm just going to take you through the goals of a pentagram ritual. And like, what are the goals that we have in doing it in general? Okay, and I've written them down. This is on in one of the essays on our site if you guys want to review it there. So, number one is to align the Theurgist with the absolute unity, the divine infinite being, the one, the supreme ultimate reality. We talked about that yesterday, right? You're a microcosm within the macrocosmic order. To associate the will directly with the will of the creator of the universe. So today, I want to talk to you a little bit more about adding I wanted to stay very clean for a minute for yesterday, to Yahweh. Okay, Yahweh proximity. Remember Yahweh's proximity, its origin. And you want to experience that as the will of God. Your will and God's will, the cosmos's will, however, whatever you're most comfortable with, is the same will. And that proximity, that origin, the origin of the self is that will.
The will of the super conscious?
Yeah, well, the will of the superconscious is a great way of looking at it, because that would be accurate, right? As a matter of fact, if you guys get into the central doctrine stuff on our website, we talk about the objective will in the string theory many worlds, okay? And how that you're connected to an infinite number of potentialities that you could experience, and that they are actually played out in the infinite sphere of string theory, and that total objective will is actually the same will as what it is that is at the center of you. Okay, but it's also at the center of every possible infinite action that could ever happen, including the actions you're taking now infinitely. Again, to get into that, guys, you got to get into the central doctrine, look up the portion that's on string theory to kind of understand that better. But go ahead, Jared.
You want to align with the will. It's not to... Is it to control your own will, or is it to feel the will?
It's that your will itself is the same will. So the point is, back to how you were asking that, it's the same will. There's only one will. Okay. You understand? If you look at it philosophically and you study Schopenhauer, I give with caution, just because he was a bit of a pessimist. But Schopenhauer gave the perspective that everything is will. Okay, Nietzsche picked up on that. He called it a will to power. There's things to be cautioned with Nietzsche too, but he's a great study if you're into philosophy at all. Same idea Jung and Pauli continued with, and that the will, right, is quite literally the generation. It's like the energy of the psyche, is how Jung would put it, is that your psyche is energy, right? Okay. And that you got to understand that it's energy, just like you would understand you plug in a stereo and hit play and there's energy there. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
And so our psyche has that. We're a force of nature. Does that make sense as far as looking at it more from a Theurgic point of view? We're a force of nature. So that will has a proximity. It has a source.
Okay.
It has an origin.
Right.
Proximity, source, origin, will. Almost look at that, a triangle. Proximity, origin, source, will. I guess that'd be a box. However you put it, right? So my point is the will is the origin of the male force of existence.
What was the 3?
Well, proximity. Okay, we talked about this yesterday. So proximity, origin. Think about proximity and think about origin as being the same thing.
Oh, okay.
And then the will is the same thing as those two. Proximity, origin, will. They're the same thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's under the...
That's
second
Yahweh.
step.
Yeah, Yehovah. Right. Yeah, Yahweh. So that's the centeredness, the maleness. So you add will in. It's the divine will. You're experiencing the divine will itself. Okay. Now we were reading these. Let me make sure that I didn't get all the way through these. See this? Here we go floating. Hopefully you guys enjoy the creativity of this process. I am.
You said it was about imagination.
Yeah. But let me get back into this. We started talking about certain things. Okay, we were talking about number 2, right? Which was the to associate the will directly with the will of the creator of the universe. And it's best to think at that point of the fashioner of the universe, the geometry of the universe, right? Like for
Sacred geometry.
yeah, well, sacred geometry is most definitely, let's say, core central to this thought process to a degree. But more what I'm saying is the fashioner of the universe itself is the creator of the universe. I mean, like he's a worker, you know what I mean? It's the creator. It's the effort of the universe. It's the will of the universe.
Is it a he?
Well, I think that in the demiurgos is considered male. And Brahma, which is also the same developer of the universe in Hindu, is male. And the way I've always looked at that is, at least specifically, is more of like an actual powerful craftsman, right? Someone who fashions the universe, you know what I'm saying? With you know, like almost like a blacksmith type of deal.
It's more like a trade versus a gender.
To a degree, yeah, exactly. It's a process that's happening. It's the creator of the universe. Well, how's he creating the universe? With the will, right?
Okay.
And so you're aligning with the creator of the universe's will, and it is a male force, a male energy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Because of origin.
Yes,
because of
yes.
proximity.
That's right.
Of Yahweh.
Yeah, Yahweh being proximity, origin being and go back to what Yahweh means. At this point, it's useful. It's a male verb. It's a singular male verb. It's action. It's an activity. It's not a noun. Okay, the femininity of things are more like nouns. In other words, objective existence, like the womb itself, right? Or the world itself, or all of the vegetation around us, our body. It's a noun, it's a thing, you know what I mean?
But Yahweh is a verb.
Yeah, exactly. But Yahweh is a verb, that's right.
Action.
And it's a singular verb, and then Elohim is a feminine plural noun, right? The plurality of the existence of things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so very equal in its mindset of thinking between the two of them. But when you're doing Yahweh, you're in your maleness, and you want to look at that as being aligning with the actual creator of the universe. And when we get to doing the pentagram ritual side of what we're doing, it's exactly what you're doing when you align the pentagram powers, is you're aligning it with the demiurgos, with the creator of the universe. Okay, so this is identifying with the divine will of the creator. So is to associate the will directly with the will of the creator of the universe. So number 3 is to awaken the body of light. We haven't got there yet. Okay, we haven't talked about that, even though you're already dealing with light, really.
Didn't you talk about that yesterday with the orb and the...
Well, that's what I'm saying, is you're already working with light. You're working with what would be considered luminous light, okay? Within the luminous body of the imagination of nature, okay? You want to start seeing that as not necessarily something that's in your imagination, but inside of the imagination of nature itself, right? The luminous body itself, right? And so, yes, we are starting to build, let's just say, geometric unity of some sort within that space. We are doing that. The scintillating ball of light above your head, for example. That's a sphere.
That I had geometric unity of self.
Well, that's a great way of looking. And guys, for those of you that have gotten into sacred geometry and you're thinking about certain things pattern-wise, and I'll just tell you this now, at least during the process of Theurgy, the geometry you're experiencing or wanting to experience is spherical. Spherical.
Always?
Yes, in this process. Okay. And again, that doesn't mean that the dynamics of a leaf and the way that goes into a perfect pie and all those things, it doesn't mean that that's not there. It's just that it's so difficult to...
a circle.
Well, here's what I'm saying, is it's so difficult in general, guys, let everyone listen, to get your imagination to hold those patterns the way we're doing it. You're going to hold that scintillating ball of light above your head. While we do today, which is the fourth resonation, you're going to hold in your heart. Okay, we're going to the heart today.
Can I use like an image
You're supposed to.
Oh, so
Yeah,
like,
you're
so
supposed
like,
to
if
see
I
it.
see a sunrise, and when you can get that
Imagine the
globe,
sun sitting on top of your head, dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
that-
absolutely.
I
Guys,
can
that's
take that-
actually a great way of doing it, especially if you've ever seen the sun when it's been almost brilliant white.
Yeah, it's
Just-
right when it rises.
Yeah, just
right
have that
above the
sitting on top of your head. Yes, you could absolutely use additional imagery. While you go through the process of Theurgy, it will purify itself. It'll just purify itself. I mean, I'm
Okay,
glad to
okay,
actually
okay.
explain this. I don't know if I've ever had a chance to explain this. Whatever you do use in order to facilitate the experience of it, like whatever is up on top of your head, scintillating white light is what I always see as a ball, right? It will purify itself as you go through the process of theurgically experiencing it and holding it in place, right? Because you're holding that geometrical force in place during the entire ritual. Once we go to the next part of the ritual, the whole time you want to try to imagine that ball still there. Okay. So when we build the ritual and you have the ball there, it stays the whole ritual. And when you go proximity and when we do Yahweh, you stay in your origin. You understand? You stay in that proximity. So you've got this light above your head, drawing a light into your body. You're at your exact proximity, at your exact center. You keep that too. And then you invite the body of light, the sacredness of things, the feminine anima mundi, the womb itself, right, into the experience. And so you're inviting the imagination of nature to come in spiritually and be involved with you. It's an involvement. You don't want to remember, like I said yesterday.
Invitation?
Well, like yesterday, I mean, let me get to this. It's too easy to get too principally based.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Right.
We got to keep in mind that there's also a spiritual nature to everything we're doing. Yahweh has a spiritual nature to it, meaning it has an agency. It has an intelligence, right? And you're invoking that intelligence, right? You're experiencing the spiritual agency, the vastness of its intelligence. You understand? You got to always keep that in mind, because that is what really lights up the luminous body, right? Is that you're listening for and you're seeking to see in vision the actual agency of its intelligence, which is vast, right? That idea of proximity, that idea of origin, that idea of the divine will, that has a vast spiritual agency. You invoked that God. You understand? You actually invoked Yahweh. Does that make sense? When you're going for the absolute unity with I am that I am, you're invoking the spiritual agency of that God. When we do the protectors, when we get past the pentagrams and we're doing the protectors, and again, you can either use the demons of Greek, or you can use the angels of the Abrahamic religion. I found those, Michael, Gabriel. If you want to do an alternative, we're going to be using the Greek, but there are alternatives, and I talk about that on the site. And they have a spiritual agency. And the thing is just like what I was explaining to you just now, where you wanting to put a ball above your head. I told you it will purify that for you over time, over practice, continuing to do it. It will purify itself. You're using that imagination part of that in order to get to that point of purity, right? And proximity, same idea. There's something in your imagination, like you're imagining somewhere in the proximity, right? There's something in your mind that's feeling central. Like, so yesterday, you're like, I'm being centralized? I'm like, yes, that's fine. But more of what I meant, like I said yesterday, is its proximity, its origin. By continuing to work on having any way of using your imagination to experience that, it will purify itself.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, you'll get better at it.
Well, it's sort of that you'll get better at it. It's more that you'll become more aware consistently of that principle in a way of actually experiencing its spiritual nature, its archetypal nature, its eternal nature.
Clearer.
Much more. Yeah, like you're tuning a lens. Yeah.
Chant.
Yeah, exactly.
Radio.
You got it. You're tuning into it, right? And as you tune in, it becomes more conscious. And right now it's
That's why
unconscious.
the frequency helps us.
100%. Yeah, well, the frequency, that third frequency, again, what she's mentioning right now, guys, is like from yesterday, that when we do the resonant divine names, that there's octaves, okay? There's 2 octaves, and then a third octave that's not there, but you know it, you can hear it, sort of, in your head.
They kind of
It's
make
like-
it
it's
together.
it's less.
Like they combine.
I almost said it wrong. So it's not that you can't hear it, sort of. What happens? If I could explain this a little bit better.
Like it just sounds in your brain.
If I can make it a little bit better. When you hear the original octave of the resonant divine name, and then you hear the third octave, okay, because remember, the original octave would be your resonation, then 7 notes above would be that original octave, right? The one you can hear. And you guys can hear in my voice. I actually listened back through yesterday's and you can hear it, right? So in other words, it's going to be better for you to probably listen to the polished ones that I've done, but that still was useful. And so since you can hear the main bass line of the mantra, and the octave, it's easy to imagine what the third octave is, like we talked about yesterday, because it's just 7 notes up. Like if you go to G, you go to a high G, then let's you just say go to a higher G. It's the same note, right? And so by hearing the octave, you can imagine where that second octave is. What that does while you're resonating is because you're listening for something you can't hear, it's going to stimulate seeing that which you can't see, that which is unconscious to you, that which comes to you in vision. In a more mundane way, your vision of your mom yesterday, and the fact that you could see that principally, right? You saw, oh, there's a principle here. Do you see what I'm saying? That's more of a mundane, discursive, back and forth, something that happened on an average every day. And I wanted to get that from you to see if something like that did happen, and it did. You know, very successful yesterday what we did. So my point is when you're listening to that third octave, it's going to stimulate your visionary luminous sense, your sensibility. And remember, that which you haven't experienced yet, you're unconscious to. You're becoming conscious of it through this process by tuning and balancing. Go ahead.
So that third octave, is that going to, can it be that I hear an image?
Yes, sure. If that helps you get it, it'll purify itself.
Oh, right.
Do you understand? In other words, it's important to say, well, I've got an anchor. Well, what is your anchor? For me, it's going to be that third octave, I'm going to have an image for it.
I keep thinking of a small little white light.
There you go. That's not a bad thing to do. As a matter of fact, when we talk about the Okima, which we won't today, that white light that's above your head, you can imagine there's a third chakra. I mean, not the third, I apologize. Another chakra would be the 8th, right in the center of that, above your head. Okay. And so you could put it at the center. You could put it, yes. You could put it at the center of that scintillating ball sitting on your head. Okay, because that is actually, it's a formula of 8 and 9 past 7. 7 is the 7 chakras in the system, right? So in other words, if I didn't have time to go through Kundalini with Jared, I actually plan to do that with someone else and do a recording for it, just because we only had 10 days, and since we're just learning the banishing ritual, and I want him to get as much out of it as he can, and also for you to be able to get as much out of it as you can without it being too extensive. I focused on banishing, but normally what you would do is you would do Tantra. You would do Tantra Kundalini, and you would focus on the 7 chakra centers. The 8th chakra center, you could say, is at the middle of that white scintillating ball. The 9th, okay, is the Ohima, is the actual spherical boundary that's surrounding you, which if you guys study from the central doctrine is physically there. Like we're like miniature black holes to a degree, okay? And this is something worked out by Leonard Susskind, not me, okay? By one of our most prominent string theorists, right? You have a boundary, and that boundary is projecting in spherically to who you are, okay? That's the 9th. And then the 10th, okay, because if you guys are familiar with Platonism, Pythagorean theory, or even Platonic Kabbalah, which is, the tree of life, for any of you that, don't know that officially and you are into Kabbalah, you can look that up, Platonism and Kabbalah, because basically Kabbalah is Platonism. They work with 10, okay? So if you got 7 chakras, then the 8th is the one that's sitting right in the center of the ball that's sitting on your head. And then that top of that ball is similar to the top of the whole spherical horizon around you. In general, your Okima is what they call it. The soul vehicle, spherically surrounds you. That's the number, that's 9. Your aura we'll talk about when we get to the body of light. It's relative. And if you guys want to learn about how the body of light is relative to that Okima boundary, that personal boundary, again, that is in our central doctrine. So we'll get to explaining that when we get there. I don't want to get too into the weeds.
I'm good at taking.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that third octave. You wanted to use a kind of a visual. So use
I don't understand notes and octaves very well. Like I can't, when people say those things, I can't visualize it.
Okay, let me try to better explain that just a little bit, okay? G is a note, okay? And there's 7 notes in the scale. Then they repeat. Right? So if you go up a string on a guitar, it goes da na 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 na. Right. And then you go again up that. Well, I actually just did
but
a
if
scale.
I've never gone up a scale, it would be hard to
I understand. Yes, so I want to try to keep it as simple as possible. So all it is that G has another counterpart to G 7 notes up. Right. It's the same note.
Same note, just higher.
Yeah, and the way you can really understand that is when we do our resonant, whatever note is our main resonant, that higher octave that you hear is exactly 7 notes above. It's exactly. And so you're hearing an octave. Okay? So the best way to understand this, even if that concept's not clear to you, is to hear it. Yeah. So and you could probably even say now you hear it.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
I know
all you need to imagine is what would the next higher one sound like.
Now I want to imagine that, and even if I'm not getting it right, it'll get right over time.
It'll tune you, right? It's a tuning.
Okay.
You're using that to tune. That's why we use octaves in anything that we do here with Theurgy, which again I do believe for this kind of meditation works the most accurate way to do things. Again, you can learn about the different types of mantra on our site. There's essays on that. So, okay, so number 3 is to awaken the body of light and the soul's first vehicle, okay? That first vehicle we talked about is the Okima. We don't need to get into that, but just letting you know what it is. Oh, so let me read this all together. To awaken the body of light and the soul's first vehicle, the astral plane, the imaginal world of our divinatory natures. We've been talking about those things, okay? Number 4, to banish and invoke the raw elements of fire, water, air, and earth, purifying them in the refining perfection of the Dermiargos. So we're going to put the elements in service of the creator of the universe, okay? In other words, we want to be purified in spirit, which is fire. And again, these 4 elements break down in so many different ways. I'm just using one at this point. Spirit, fire, right? Emotions, water, okay. Right? We want to be spiritually connected to the Dermiargos, right? We want to keep God in our memory at all times, right?
Since it's fire, which is spirit, spirit should be pure, because fire purifies.
And it's a really good point, and why I said we want to be aware of its presence. In fact, we talked a little bit about this, okay. Right? Because you just have to be aware of fire, right? Because it is the purifying force, like you talked about. So it's different than the other elements from that perspective. Okay. And it's the refiner's fires, if you want to be biblical about it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And in other words, it's the perfecting nature of spirit itself, in and of itself, is what purifies. You are correct. Okay. So in other words, in fire, when we do fire, you just want to be aware of its presence, because it will do its work itself. It's spirit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, let God do instead of you, right? As some people might say.
All right.
Right? In other words, you want to keep the spiritual nature of reality always constantly present with yourself. Okay, the way the ancient Hebrews used to put it is they take YHVH, Yahweh, and they talk about how you want to imagine it tattooed to your forehead. Right, and so God was always here at your frontal lobe, like right here where you make your most executive decisions about life, right? I always liked that. But my point is just by being aware of its fire's spiritual existence, it does its own work. Okay. Water, emotions, right? And again, there's all kinds of ways to break down these elements, but I'm just giving the simplest one, emotions. We want to be emotionally clear. And in Theurgy, guys, if you're going to follow our school's programs and actually go through the 5 years that we have available for those in the intermediary school, we go through purifications, okay? But in general, what it is you want to be working with the truer, lighter, more compassionate emotions, right? And you want to have an emotional clarity. For example, I'll give a really clear example, guys. If we went to war, okay, what emotions would you want to make sure were purified? Fear, cowardice, you know, the things that would stop you from defending, right?
From performing.
Defending, right? When you're dealing with your family, you're dealing with your wife and kids and things like that. You want to be as compassionate as possible, right? You don't want to get over emotional, like if let's say your son does something wrong. You don't want to fly off the handle. You want to apply exactly the right amount of emotion to your situations. You want to share and receive in a very clean, purified way emotionally. You want to be master of your emotions in that, for instance. But emotions are still kind of a higher energy. They're, air and earth are the lower energies, where emotions, they're hard to control. They just kind of show up sometimes. You know what I mean? And they're tied, they're tied to biological underpinnings of the archetypes too. And so we're getting stimulated by our animal body too. You know what I mean? You're hungry, you're sick, you're tired. Whatever your animal body's communicating, it's causing emotional changes in your body, right? So there are things with your emotions you can't really control. You just want to be purified with the way you're experiencing them so they don't become overwhelming. Does that make sense? No emotion completely and absolutely overwhelming for long periods of time is healthy.
No, I wouldn't think so.
It's just not. I mean, there's rises of emotional bliss. But for the most part, you want to have them very balanced, right? And honestly, for the most part, we are somewhat of a Neoplatonist framework in what we're doing. And the Neoplatonists had incorporated Stoicism, okay? For the most part, you want to be stoic.
I love stoic.
Well, and for the most part, you just want to be. You understand? But that by itself is really an individual that's capable of applying the proper emotional balance to things. Okay? It doesn't mean that you don't show love. You show it in a balanced way. Right? You don't show compassion, you show compassion in a balanced way.
Show everything in a balance.
Yeah, so from this perspective, you're balancing. But anyways, water, okay, is a purifying of the emotions. Air is a purifying of the thoughts. Okay? It's the mental body, right? It's the logical self that if left alone without an emotional master of love, compassion, grace, you know, the emotions, if it didn't have an emotional master, it would be a tyrant. You understand? Because mind without the higher spiritual and emotional natures has the most capability of just getting completely out of control. Does that make sense? Because, I mean, the mind is powerful, but it requires a balanced spiritual and emotional self. So that's why those are higher.
Okay.
But mind is given, and here's what it comes down to. You have to use your mind, because you wouldn't be, what are you, 46?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be 46 if you didn't use your mind. You'd be dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so the lower two, the air and earth, they're required. In other words, there's engagements you have to do. Okay,
Right.
You have to feed the body. You have to at least stay healthy enough to stay alive.
Right.
You have to do the things you're doing to care for the young in your life. There's all of the biology that we have. You know, we want to reproduce, we want to eat. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. You have to do those things, or you're just dead.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
To be purified emotionally and to be purified spiritually is a choice.
Right. Yeah.
Okay?
And most people bear those emotions for years and they make them sick.
They absolutely, and that comes down to constellated content that's emotionally stuck in the unconscious, right? And we could get into all kinds of fun stuff on that. We talk a lot about that in our central doctrine too, guys. If you want to, you know, if you're into Jung, you'll love our stuff, because he's a major protagonist for the things that we're doing. So anyways, okay, so that made sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Earth.
yeah, and then Earth, just simply, it's planet, it's the physical world. It's, you know, physis, right? It's the actual mortality of the body, right? Okay, and it's also
of the body.
Yeah, it is, and how you purify the body is through change. That's why when we get around to the DMOs, peace, right, and love, and dominion, and change are the four principles of those, right? And guys, I don't want to get too far ahead, but we talked about this a little bit yesterday. And so change is earth, right? And so, in other words, the body is always changing, dude. You're aging. Yeah, exactly. Your mortality is a real thing. And so what it is that in the earthen plane, change is the rule. Meaning you need to be comfortable with change, and you need to make change happen. You need to change reality, right? You're manifesting that which matters to you in this world, in the physical world. That starts first and foremost with the simplest things like food, family, you know, that kind of stuff. But that expands to the gravity of this realm. What else are you going to be developing in this realm? Because this is where you interact with people like me, and you interact with others. Does that make sense? Again, we don't want him to get too far. I'm just trying to explain this piece of it. Kind of what comes out of it. So let me just explain that again, so that we don't have everybody lost. But so it's to awaken the body of light and the soul's first vehicle, the astral plane, the imaginal world of our divinatory natures. Talked about that. The banishing and invoking the raw elements of fire, water, air, and earth, purifying them in the refining perfection of the demiurgos. Okay, so, well, how should we act? Well, we just need to align with the spiritual nature of the creator of the universe, and we will automatically be working in that balanced and powered nature correctly. We have to believe that by aligning with the demiurgos itself, the creator of the universe, that we are aligning with eternal principles that will allow us to understand the rightness of our actions, right? Because we want to act rightly. We want to do things correctly, truthfully. Right, it's very important, and that doesn't necessarily mean always with bubbling love, right? Sometimes you have to act with other emotions and with other energies. It's the rightness of it, right, that we align with the creator of the universe for, so that we understand the value of the central balance of things, right? Does that make sense? That it's not necessarily whether it's love or not, or whatever emotion it might be. It's that we're aligned with the spiritual creativity of the demiurgos, and so we act rightly. Does that make sense? Okay. And then to invoke the divine double, okay, that's the HGA, the personal daemon, the one who sees with spiritual eyes. So in other words, you have an eternal nature, Okay?
Right.
But you wouldn't say right now that you're experiencing this situation as an eternal nature. You just wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Right? Because you kind of have to wake up to that side of who you are. Right? You got to invite it to be eternal, to be infinite. You have to allow it to exist. And the reason is because of complementarity, guys, which Suskins is the one that kind of explained it, where in the universe, okay, at the perimeter of the universe, there are what he calls observables in the hat, which is a supersymmetric pair to exactly what you are here, but you don't know that you're also at the cosmic horizon of the universe and here, because it's projecting in on strings of energy to the point that you are. So you experience life in your mortality. But that which is actually you, that's at every point of the perimeter of the universe, and guys, if this sounds like metaphysics, this is physics, this is string theory. You can read about this in our central doctrine. Okay, I actually talk about the observables in the hat and the personal daemon, the holy guardian angel. You're not aware of that part of you that's eternal, that is at the hat region, which is at the perimeter of the universe, projecting back in on strings of energy to who you are, right? We're being projected back in from every point of the cosmic horizon of the cosmos. Everything is. The planets, everything is. Not just you and me, like the whole thing, right? But in the hat region, or that spherical boundary of the cosmic horizon, it's happening just like it's happening here an infinite number of times eternally. That's what string theory says. So there is that which is you that is infinite and eternal, and ritual for millennia, if it's theurgic, whether that was with the Chaldean theurgist, whether it was the Neoplatonist theurgist, or even the Merkava mystics, okay? They have this idea of descent. So that descends into you, that is you, in order to experience things that have an eternal nature. You need to see with your spiritual eyes, your eternal eyes. Okay, we're not going to get into that because that's all part of what we're doing, but that's part of the purpose. I'm going to read it one more time. To invoke the divine double, the HGA, the personal daemon, the one who sees with spiritual eyes. Okay, so it is you. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And then 6 is to prepare for the pronouncements, the prayers, the grand invocations of the archetypal spiritual agencies. We're not getting into that, but guys, that's what the school's all about. Okay, we go through the grand invocations over a period of 5 years, following the deacon system of every 10 days, the astrological wheel. I don't need to get into all that right now, but that's where we head. Is once we're all done with the invocations and the banishings, you're going to feel great. And if that's all you ever do, and everyone else, if this is all you ever do, you will progress intensely in Theurgy. It'll be a major part of the philosophy of your life. It'll make massive changes to the way you see the world. And you don't ever have to do anything else, okay? There's been periods of times when the only thing I continued to do was banish, okay? For weeks and months at times, because I didn't have a grand operation that I was looking to kind of manage. And guys, that's one of the problems with a lot of other systems too. And if you've been practicing high magic for a while, you agree with it. Is there's difficult to kind of get a centralized way of performing over time, and then how to do more grand invocations at certain specificities in an intelligent way. And we've kind of corrected all of that. So if you end up joining the mystery school, get into the back office stuff that we offer, again, I'll kind of talk about that stuff on a different conversation, and I write about it as well, as far as what we offer. But just doing what I'm showing Jared here, getting to just the banishing, if all you do is the invocations to the banishing of the pentagram ritual, as you're going to get out of this 10-day structure that we're doing right now, that could be all you ever do, and you will progress massively in Theurgy. Okay, that's just something that I can tell you that even others, such as Aleister Crowley, had even mentioned that the banishing ritual, and though others that actually have practiced various forms of it, is a supreme formula in and of itself, which is absolutely a fact. So, and then number 7, and most importantly, is to give the Theurgist a daily transformative spiritual alchemy they are able to use daily to continue the hero's quest as a Theurgist aligned with the Dermiogos of the cosmos. So what am I saying there? We are on a hero's quest, right? In Theurgy, the idea in Neoplatonic Theurgy in the 3rd century CE with Iamblichus is that we should look at the heroes in their philosophy, would have been the Greek heroes, as examples of that which is greater than we are. And the one I really like, because it's easiest to see, and it was actually one that the Pythagoreans actually had within their worship, is Hercules, okay, and the labors of Hercules. Guys, if you have, a couple hours to catch a podcast on the labors of Hercules. The most significant thing about the labors of Hercules is he would always go into them where Hera was trying to kill him. I don't know if you know the whole story. So Hera was trying to kill Hercules over all of the labors. And he would go into a labor every time not knowing whether or not he would survive it. Okay, not knowing whether or not he could actually handle it. He didn't start in the beginning of the labor and know the results. Okay, there was always this error that the goddess, Hera, was going to kill him. Okay, and something along the labor comes up auspiciously that he wasn't expecting. That is the reason he was able to complete the labor. And so the Pythagoreans looked at that as something very special, okay, where we go into life as the hero Hercules, not knowing exactly how to do everything that we need to do, and just trusting. And by doing that, somehow the things become auspicious and it somehow works out. Like if you ever look at people that are very successful, they say, well, luck was part of it. Well, what it is they just moved properly through life with the openness to that providence, to that auspiciousness, to the archetypes themselves, to that collective unconscious, to manifesting into their experiences and giving them visions of things, right? Of the rightness of things like we talked about. And so when you're looking at it from that perspective, you are the hero. And so Theurgy is the alignment so that you can move through life with a spiritual nature and a strong balance and totally and absolutely empowered to do the things in your life that matter to you. In other words, that's the same idea if you're talking about philosophy. That's the same idea if you're talking about the sense of religion in general. It's just doing it theurgically is different than most anything you'll ever experience because you're doing it energetically, visionarily. You're opening yourself to prophecy, all kinds of stuff that we don't need to get into in this conversation, but you get it. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that pre-theurgic practice awareness things happening to me, I always felt really lucky. Like really lucky.
Yeah, luck, auspiciousness, providence. I mean, we talk about a lot of this in our essential doctrine. That Iamblichus talks about this, and I'll just be quick with it. This is actually a good lesson right here. Okay, fate and providence to Iamblichus and to myself was the same principle. Okay, we call it fate when it feels like it's out of control, right? We call it providence when it feels like it's a blessing, right? So it's the surprises that we want that are the providence of things. And Iamblichus's point was that you can tune into the providence of things and not be controlled by the fate of things, but you don't get the option to avoid one or the other. You actually have to embrace the providence of things, right? The rightness of things, and the things will be a blessing to you, and then you'll have luck. Well, yeah, your mindset, if we want to take it simple, mindset, attitude, character. Okay, if you want to take it simple, mindset, attitude, character, absolutely. Theurgy helps develop that, right? Mindset, attitude, character, okay? So for sure. But in general, we're practicing Theurgy to change our experience of fate to that of providence.
Oh,
okay.
Very cool.
And all that is a philosophy, right? I mean, we could do that just from discursive philosophy or religious involvement.
So it sounds like to me that it's more of we're learning how not to just accept things, but how to actually participate in making things happen for us.
Right. In other words, there's still going to be an archetypal nature to our experiences. Archetypes formulate our experiences, right? We are absolutely free and absolutely determined all at the same time, right? And again, you have to read the central doctrine to understand that. So you're acting. Theurgy is a willful act. Does that make sense? But the experience of life is also kind of held within this future, present, past already existing. Okay, according to string theory, it all already exists. How we end up branching to one experience over another, like for example, the many worlds theory, where there's all these different possibilities, is determined in the grander scheme of things. But somehow, even though it's determined and fate is real, let's just say fate is real. I mean, one thing that we're all fated to, we're going to die, right? It's fate is real. You can experience within that mindset with freedom. And by doing that, it's a paradox because it's still determined. Okay, because God got you determined. And as a matter of fact, if you're feeling lost, it's always good to sit back and know God's got you, because God is, and again, the greater universe. We're calling it God for right now. If you know most of our stuff, it's kind of a loose term to a degree. We're talking about the unity, right? I like to call it, as our school calls it, the divine infinite being, but we're not trying to get into all that right now. So that you're held within that fate. There's not much you can really do, right? But there's a lot you can do.
Right.
Do you see how that kind of benefits you on both sides? The less we get involved and make effort, the more we're controlled by fate. The more we get in and create effort and balance and alignment and everything else, the more we tune into the providence of the same principle. We tune into it. And then all of a sudden we're like, I don't know how everything ended up working out so well. God must have been on my side. I feel really lucky. Blah, 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 blah. All those things start to happen because we've put effort in. Okay, effort is the secret part of this formula. Theurgy is all about effort. Okay, the same effort you're doing in Theurgy is also going to follow you through the effort you're making everywhere else. You're balancing, you're aligning with forces. Well, it's going to help you balance and align everything else. Okay, but you're working within principles. Okay, and those principles are archetypal, meaning they frame in your experiences.
Like if you're on, so we're on a path, but within that line or path, we can choose where we go to make it so the ride is better or
to a degree, yeah. To a degree, yeah. I mean, and that's kind of a intuitive thing, which is why, you know, a lot of the philosophers that say we're all 1,000% determined, they got to be off, because it's obvious to us that we're able to somehow be involved in the navigation of things, right? And in the direction of things. And that is what we're doing. We're balancing, we're directing, we're empowering, we're moving, we're making effort. Theurgy is philosophical effort as opposed to just philosophical discourse. Well, I don't want to call it stagnation. That's actually a terrible way of looking at it, and I'll tell you why. Is because without doing Theurgy, philosophy is still very vital. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, you could read philosophy and sit and think about it and discourse with your friends, and principles will come to you. You know what I mean? And so it's not stagnant at all. But what it isn't is it's not theurgic.
Well, does it seem
You understand?
there's
It's
a
like
playbook?
it's just not theurgic is my only point. Okay, and what I mean by that is
theurgic?
Theurgy is effort. Okay, you're putting in effort. When we do the divine names, right? When we cast the pentagram, I showed this to him earlier than today, where I showed how you became magnetic. Right, remember? Because if you rub your hands together, you can actually do that, but you can actually do it more magnetically. Not going to get into that right now, guys. I will in other lessons and stuff. I'm trying to stick to what we're doing. But you know how I showed that to you, right? So you're making effort. You're actually becoming energetic, and you're actually causing change in your environment like magic does, right? Like high magic does.
Orbit?
Well, yeah. For example,
Here?
your Akeem is the sphere around you, okay? And again, we're going to get too confused with everybody if we go too far into that right now. No, you don't mean to be sorry. So my point is, we'll get to those discussions, and we did kind of talk about it, but yes, you always want to be looking at things spherically, and that boundary, that okima, is very important for the invocations of archetypes and spirits and everything else that you're bringing into your nature. Does that make sense?
Okay.
But right now, you're just learning how to tune into the divine principles and the spiritual agencies of those divine principles, and then we will banish. We'll clear your field, okay? That feels different than everything you're feeling right now. I'm very excited about you experiencing that, because you'll feel empowered, balanced, and centered, and then you will banish. And then you'll be like, oh, that's what that does, okay? Banishing is very, very good for you. In my opinion, it's one of the reasons why we centralize the pentagram ritual for almost everything that we're doing in the school. So very excited for that. We all both just took a drink of water. Okay, so you comfortable with all that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we are going to go ahead now and practice.
Comfortable and understand different things.
Okay. He just said comfortable and understand are two different things. Now remember, the pedia, which pedia just means education, okay, is really during Theurgy. So everyone, if you're as confused as we are right now, and you're not 100% sure where we're going, hopefully you'll listen to all 10 days, because we're kind of hoping this will seal it up for you. We're going to practice Theurgy now. And when we're done, I'm going to just ask you, do you understand what we've been talking about a little better right now, okay? So let me bring the fourth principle in, okay? You already know Ahaya, you already know Yahweh, you already know Elohim, okay? The fourth one is Radha Krishna, okay? Because if you think about what we've been doing, first we're unified with the unity, then we're at our origin, and then we welcome the actual spiritual nature of the luminous body, the anima mundi of the nature of the world, the feminine principle, right? We welcome it in. But what we really haven't done at this point is we haven't given it life. Okay, we have. Don't get me wrong, they certainly have. But we're going to purposely do that. When you're drawing that energy down, you're drawing it down to your heart. Okay? I just said the center of your body because a lot of times it's easier to imagine that than then doing the Yahweh, because that's your centrality and that's your origin. But Radha Krishna is the love of the universe. Okay? And I don't know if you know much about Hindu liturgy. I'm just going to give a little bit of it, okay? So Vishnu is fairly relative to what I would consider Yahweh in Christianity. Vishnu's the supreme father god, okay? As a matter of fact, he's the singularity that entering into every bubble universe of the multiverse, that he is the will itself, right? And he incarnates into life. He incarnated, and again, this is just poetics, but he incarnated as many different versions of Vishnu. Krishna was one of them, okay? And comparatively, they say that so was Buddha and so was Christ, okay? To kind of give you this idea of this incarnating fatherly force. And then Vishnu incarnates into the world when it's out of balance. Okay, so that's the idea, is the Father incarnates into the world when it's out of balance.
Oh, okay.
Okay, one of the versions of this was Krishna. And Krishna has this paradox with Vishnu. Okay, they say that Krishna is Vishnu, and it is. All of his incarnations are him in its most personal form. Okay, so in other words, Krishna is the personal God, right? And the Vaishnava Vedanta Hindus worship Krishna as the father, okay, basically. And it's interesting because Krishna is a bit of a trickster, and he's very youthful and very playful. In fact, they call the play of Krishna and Radha Leela. They call it Leela, okay? And if you want to know what that energy's like, I'll give it to you very simple. When your kids were 3 and 4 years old and you were rolling around in the living room with them playing crazy fucking shit that didn't even make any sense, okay, right? And you're making stuff up as you're playing, right? And your kids are having a great time because, right, you ever make something up and it's the first time you ever did it with your kids and they absolutely love it? You know what I'm saying?
I have the image in my head.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone does, right? Right, that playfulness with your children, but that newness of it. You understand? Like where they're like, oh my gosh, Dad, this is so much fun. And it could be the simplest, dumbest thing. You know what I mean? But they love it, right? That's Leela. And when they play with each other, that's Leela. When you are first chasing around your wife and you're wanting to be romantic with her, you're trying to engage her in Leela. Do you understand? You're trying to get her to have a good time with you, right? Just like, oh yeah, she's going to marry me. She just had a good time.
Leela is like one of my core energies.
Leela's play. Yeah, you have a very strong Leela, I would have to say, Jared. Yeah, you know, for those of you that are listening, Jared and I have known each other quite some time, and he's been very, very patient.
Like one of my oldest friends. Did you know
Yeah,
that?
I know.
My wife was asking me that last night, and I was like, I don't know who that is. And then I'm like, I think it's Beto. It's like, what?
Yeah, I've known you since I was in 8th grade, I think.
Yeah.
Is when you got here. I was in 8th grade.
I was in 7th.
Yep.
Crazy.
That's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
So anyways, my point is you do have a lot of that energy. I know guys, you don't see this in Jared right now, but he's usually very, very full of energy all the time, right? And that's yeah, well, you're trying to focus while we're here, which I really appreciate. So that Leela is that play, that fun that you have, right? And it's the stories of Radha and Krishna are replete with Krishna upsetting Raja just a bit, and then her coming to him or him going to her, and his beauty being so overwhelming she just can't help but be back with him.
That's awesome.
Okay, well, think about that. That's kind of how it is.
That's like my marriage. No.
Well, that's kind of how it is, right? It's like there's this part of love that's so sacred. They actually have a picture of Radha and Krishna dancing in a Leela dance. We actually have that on the lover's card of our tarot. And it's so sacred that it's even beyond marriage. As a matter of fact, on our card, on the original lover's card, it is the marriage of Adam and Eve, and it's being conducted by the hermit. On our card, I still have Adam and Eve and the hermit and conducting the marriage, but it's in a shadow behind the Leela dance. Because the Leela dance is an eternal dance that's on a particular planet where Radha and Krishna exist, and it's eternal, right? And it's beyond marriage. Okay, it's beyond any other bond. It is the realest of love. It's real love. You understand? Like it's the Leela of it. It's the play of it. It's the actual true love of it, right? If you're truly, truly in love with somebody, you don't need a contract. Well, very much so, emotion, like highest emotion of it. You could say highest emotion of it, right? To a degree. Does that make sense? So we don't need to get into all these principles because it actually would have to go into a whole discussion about astrology and archetypes. And we're not doing that right now. But what you want to do is Radha, okay, is in the body of the goddess that you've already invoked.
Okay.
Okay, remember you did Elohim, you brought in the Anima Mundi.
Right.
Radha,
We're submerged.
right? Radha is absolute and total devotional love for Krishna. Krishna
Okay.
is at your center. Okay, so in other words, at the center of
So
who you
love
are.
yourself.
Well, it's not just you; it's all things.
Well, but we're all one. So if you love yourself, you love
Yeah.
everything.
Exact. And Krishna is all expressions. So what Jung had to say about archetypes, right? They asked him about archetypes. He said, well, there's as many archetypes as there are behaviors in human behavior, right? That's what he said, is that there's an archetype for every type of behavior. There's something that molds us into every behavior that we have, right? But Krishna is all of that, plus every possible form and archetype that could ever exist in its totality. It's all expression. Okay, so Krishna is all expression. And well, if you're going through an experience of all expression, wouldn't you be playful about it? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
You-
but
you
it's
would-
all expression, so everything kind of would. kind of-
Negative, positive,
Yeah, like that would
it's
be.
everything.
That would be. I mean, it's almost like it would be peaceful and silent because everything is everything. You know what I mean?
Man, you really kind of nailed an awesome concept there, and you're right, okay? So, and again, remember, now that we're thinking principally, look at what you were able to do just in philosophy. That was a philosophy lesson. We haven't done theurgy yet. You got to that conclusion with us talking.
Right.
That's philosophical. Does that make sense? So you want to look at those things as valuable, okay? Okay, so that's what Radha Krishna is. So Krishna is the male expressiveness, right? Okay. Radha is the absolute appreciation of that energy and the surrender to that energy. You want the Anima Mundi, the energy of the luminous body, to surrender to that which is you in your full expression. You understand?
I want the luminous body to surrender.
To surrender
me
to you in
my
your
full
fullest expression, which is expressed through Krishna. Okay, Krishna is the all beautiful, all loving, all playful, right? The auspiciousness of Krishna is so powerful, yet he is so personal, right? For some philosophers that I work with, Eastern philosophers, Krishna is very much what they pray to. In where I've always kind of been more comfortable back and forth with more of a traditional Western perspective on the God I pray to. But it's the same Godhead. Does that make sense? They've just had a different way of looking at it. And I consistently look at Krishna and Radha as principles and spiritual agencies that I need to develop, especially being more Western, born here in the United States. It's very helpful to see God as playful, right? And almost trickster-like, but loving and absolutely beautiful and never any bad intention through it. It's all Leela. You understand? That's something they've captured in the East that we've had a hard time here in the West. We like to almost look at God in this dynamic,
it's a more
like handle it in the desert, 40 years in the desert.
You're not Christian, boy. You're gonna get spankings.
You're gonna go to hell. Right, all that stuff. So
You're gonna come down
so-
molten lava.
exactly. And that empowering eternal strength is great. But Krishna and Leela and all that, I mean, like when I first started really getting into it, I was talking to somebody that was a devotee and also a teacher, Todd, of religion and philosophy. He helped me understand it really well. So again, it's already, our times, like we know, our time just keeps going. It's fun though. This is going to be good for people. But we need to get into doing some theurgy. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and perform after this plane that's flying overhead. It's gonna.
Obviously, the timing was not perfect.
Look at that thing, dude. No, that's actually a good sign. It's right above our head. It's time to get started. Okay, so that's the fourth one is Radha Krishna. Okay, and you want that to emanate from your heart. You want to experience it. The best thing again is like you were talking about. Beto, can I use an image? Here, think about love. Okay, love's an easy one. Okay, it's the love of Radha Krishna. Okay, that just like the other principles, as you continue, will do what?
Purify.
It will purify itself. That's correct. So that's why, again, everyone, you want to practice theurgy often. It's more of a philosophical endeavor. It's not something like, oh, this big major operation. No, you do it every day, all the time, till you die. Just like any other philosophy you might get into. Theurgy is something you should always be doing. So, yeah, go ahead. Okay, you ready? Yeah, the light sounds great. In fact, that'll help you get the ball on top of your head, right? So Aheya, then Yahweh. Yeah, we're going to do it 3 times. And normally, guys, we're doing it 3 times. When you're invoking, you will do it 3 times. At least you should. Because when you're doing the invoking pentagram, you're really trying to get the energies going. You're invoking the energies. You're not just banishing them. And you should do everything 3 times, except for the pentagram. Pentagram's just done once no matter what. But the invocations you do 3 times. When you're doing a regular banishing, okay, and it's just a daily ritual, once. You do each one once. In fact, when we're done, before the end of the 10 days, we'll go through it on a once time. But you need to remember what the resonations are, or you won't be able to, right? So maybe on that day, I'll even bring them so you can look at them, okay? Yeah, well, my point is I'll bring you a piece of paper that has them on there.
Oh, awesome.
So we'll do them one at a time. Yeah, so we'll do them one at a time, but you'll be able to read it. 'Cause I'm not expecting you to have that memorized. Oh, you should be doing this off your balcony. He's got one of the best balconies in town, guys. You can see the sunrise. It's beautiful there. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started on this. Let me just make sure we're still recording. Okay, so we're going to start out with the fire breath. Actually, sign of silence, apologize. So that's the index finger, the right index finger to the lips, and you just clear your mind the best you can and take some deep breaths. All right, I wanted to mention, again, I didn't mention this yesterday, so I am today. Again, I hope you guys enjoy the creative aspects of what we're doing here. But Jared, before we officially start, when you do a heya, touch your forehead. Touch your forehead and feel that ball above your head. When you get to Radha Krishna, you're going to touch your heart. While you're doing Yahweh and Elohim, it's really Yahweh Elohim. You're just doing it separate, right? Your hands are out like this. So they're out pentagram style. Yeah, that's a heya. Touch your forehead. While your arms are out, you're doing Yahweh Elohim, but of course you're doing it Yahweh then Elohim. And then when you do Radha Krishna, put your right hand on your heart and feel it coming from your heart. And remember, we're trying to build into this, meaning that the scintillating ball of light for my heya is still above your head. The proximity of Yahweh is still at your proximity, at your very core. And then the body of light, the Elohim, the physical presence of the Anima Mundi is all still there. Then you do the vibration of Radha Krishna. And the proximity of Yahweh is the same proximity as Krishna. They're not living somewhere else. It's the same proximity. Yeah. It's the same male expressiveness that's there. Before. That's right. And Radha is the Anima Mundi, is the spirit, the feminine spirit that you invited, the Shekinah. And then that turns into what? Like we talked about, that turns into compassion and surrender. So your luminous body is surrendering to the all-expressiveness of yourself, and its Leela, its play, its love. And you want to feel that emotional love there. That, again, will purify to its, what it really is, which is still love, but beyond what we can really say it is. We experience it differently. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Yeah, and between each, guys, again, we're going to be a little bit more polished today, I think, because we'll continue that. But between each one, you take a deep breath and put your finger to your lips and stay silent. Okay, guys, silence is the most important principle. It's like in music. It's what you don't play that's more important than what you're playing. It's something that, is actually really true. It's like as far as what you're seeing visually, you look for that which you cannot see. What you're hearing, you listen for that which you cannot hear. It's that which you are not playing, you could say, that's most important. You're even listening for the silence during the time that you're doing the invocations, because you're listening for that third octave that's not there, just for example. And so when you do take that deep breath between, try to keep your thoughts out and just try to listen and see and hold the sign of silence to your lips and take a deep breath and then go into the next resonant theory. And remember, you're trying to build on it as we add more. We're going to add one more today, which is Radha Krishna. Go ahead, sign of silence, take a deep breath. Okay, put your hands on your belly and do the fire breath. As we talked about yesterday, you're breathing very rapidly deep into your stomach, into your hands. Hold it. Sign of silence. Finger to your forehead, scintillating bright light. You said the sun above your head, sitting there, drawing it into your body. And we're doing unity, Aheya, which is Aheya Ashra Aheya, I am that I am, the microcosm connected with the macrocosm being one full unity. Aheya. I'm going to do it once, then you do it the 2 second times with me. Stay silent, absorb the energies. Remember the different predicates, skipping a ball above your head. Energy coming down to the heart, surrounded by the anima mundi, centered at the very proximity of the self. And now experiencing the multi-formed love of the Leela of Radha Krishna. You could even say the purpose of life. Now, normally we would sit here for a little bit longer in silence. At the very end of your ritual, it's important to get at least a few minutes in. 5 minutes, if you can do it, of just absorbing the energies. Because they say at the end of your ritual, what you want to do is absorb the energies. But you want to do it very naturally, not be in a hurry, right? You just made a lot of changes in your luminous body, even in your brain through neuroplasticity during this process. And so you want to just naturally, for as long as you can, just hold those predicates of the ritual in your imaginal body, in your luminous self, and feel centered, feel the proximity, feel the purpose. But you understand the Radha Krishna piece of it. It's really just life's purpose. Why are we here? Well, it's like we could come into massive definitions, but one thing we know is we're here to play. We're here to play with our kids. We're here to play music. If we're a musician, we're here to build a business, which would be the Leela of our business. You know what I mean? It's the expression. It's the Radha Krishna aspect of it. Is your expressiveness. How are you expressing yourself? And have you surrendered to that? Where do you see that most directly? With your children, hanging out with kids. It's a surrender. It's an automatic surrender that we have towards the love and joy of hanging out with a 3-4-year-old that suddenly thinks he's a pirate. You're the shark swimming through the living room on a pillow. You follow what I'm saying? It's like the most obvious aspects of it, we kind of lose that obviousness. As we get older, we get too rigid. And Radha Krishna is that aspect of Leela. Yeah, and sometimes you have to be hardened. You know, I don't dislike, I actually do like kind of Crowley's idea of love under will, right? That the will, right, the strength of God is that which is the most permanent. It must always be present, right? Is to grow in the strength of the totality state of existence, the divine infinite being, the strength of it, the will of it, the divine will. But it's love under will, meaning that it's Leela for the most part, right? It's play, it's the pleasure of life. It's the appreciation that we are alive. The fact that we actually are having this experience, I mean, like, how is it even possible that we're down by the river practicing Theurgy, just for example? You know what I mean? I mean, how is it that there's even an existence to it? You know, or this car. I mean, like, it's an incredible thing. And so it's an expressive thing. There's all these expressions of existence, and we're one of them. And appreciating that and also surrendering to it. We want to surrender to the love of those things, the love of our family, the love of our kids, the love of our friends, the love of our business, the things that we're doing. We want to surrender the things that we're doing. Right, and that's that energy of Radha Krishna, is to stay in Leela, right? Because what days are your best days at work? When you're joking around, having a good time with your people. Now, I know that. I'm the same way for me. It's not even necessarily whether or not I've made strides in work, but that's very important. That's the strength of it, right? The strength always has to be there. But it's the days that I really enjoy the process of that work, that Leela, you know what I mean? That surrender, I surrendered to it. That I surrendered to that experience of form. That's Radha Krishna. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So again, Jared, same idea. Tomorrow, let's just, you know, did you think about this at all? Didn't make any sense to you? How was your experience during it? And yeah, even tell me kind of how you're feeling now. I'm just going to hand you the recorder.
Feeling fine. I like the sun. It feels really good. I did find that when I turned towards the sun, it was easier to visualize the ball over my head. Again, I can hear things better, almost like the birds and things of that nature. Like, I hear nature better. I feel more attuned with nature, and I'm a very tuned in with energy, nature-y person, so I like it here. Colors are a little bit brighter. The Lilu, is it Leela? Leela?
Play, yeah.
Layla.
That principle makes sense to you?
I love that principle.
And does it not seem as a central principle of reality?
It seems like a central
spirit.
principle of myself.
Well, think about it. And so Krishna's always having a good time, right? Pretty much,
Yeah.
right? So the next time you're having a good time with your kids, realize there's a spirit to that. There's an agency to it. You get it?
I think, like, it makes perfect sense to me. It resonates with me, like, with clarity. And so I completely get it because I've always felt it. But I wouldn't have put a name to it.
Well, and you don't necessarily have to
know?
do that. The spiritual agency's there, period.
Yeah.
What it is everything that you're doing theurgically and even philosophically is you're deciding for a moment to give that principle attention.
Right.
You're just giving it attention. You're like, well, that exists. Well, what is it? And then suddenly you're holding it still. And that's the same idea in Theurgy, is you're just holding these principles still long enough to experience them directly.
Is the point to be able to recognize?
To begin with, yes. Yes, to first recognize, but then to completely invite, invoke, and live through. To let the gods live through you. You understand?
Then,
you're taking the shape of these principles, the shape of this agency, and you want that shape to shape you. Does that make sense?
Is it possible that I've been evoking, or those other words that you used, even though I've never done Theurgy?
1000%. It's a natural force, you bet.
Because I feel that even though I'm very male, I have a very strong intuition, like an extremely strong intuition.
Yeah, I know that. I've actually known that about you for a while. And intuition's super important. Okay, guys, what we're doing is divinatory arts, okay? And I don't want to get too far into that description, simply because when most people think about divination, they immediately go to runes or tarot cards or I Ching. Divinatory arts themselves are beyond just using tools such as that, although they are very involved in it. And that intuitive nature you're talking about is a divinatory state. Where does our intuitions come from? There's definitely biological underpinnings that explain a lot of it, right? But it doesn't explain enough of it, right? Why are people that are even more capable than us not as productive as we are? Because our intuitions are stronger, their logic is stronger. You have to have both sides. Intuition's what gets you to risk. Intuition's what gets you to trust. Right? Logic, most of the time, tells you what you shouldn't be doing, right?
Right, because you're thinking, well, this is obviously not a good idea. There's way that the chances of me succeeding are very low, and the punishment is far exceeds the reward.
Yeah, that's where logic comes. And logic's extremely important. In fact, you know, I'm in agreement that the logos itself of the highest intelligence kind of gave us logic. You know what I mean? That logic's a divine thing. Like, I absolutely believe that. But as we talked about earlier, you know, logic would be more pinned to air, right? To the mind. And where the emotions themselves, purified, give a different direction. They give an intuitive direction. And that's where our divinatory nature is. And that's why I'm saying the water and fire, you kind of have to decide there. I am going to be spiritual. I am going to trust my intuition and live by intuition. You don't have to do that at air and water. Air and earth, like we were talking about. Air, you have to think. You're dead.
Right.
You have to feed your body or you're dead.
You have to have logic and
yeah, if you don't
sense.
have that, you're done. And a lot of people just live in those two areas and they don't tap into the other two.
So I'm tapping into, okay, without knowing what I'm even doing.
Well, and you're always somewhat there anyways, because like you said, you live by intuition. Okay, so it's not like you're not experiencing it. What it is you're centralizing it and focusing on it and then becoming luminous with it. Because everything's a luminosity, dude. Okay, your imagination is what has led you to everything you've ever done in your business, with your family, building your house when you built your house. Your luminousness.
Oh yeah, when
right?
I couldn't be something, I couldn't do it. If I couldn't see it in my mind, I couldn't do it in reality.
Well, and you know,
it was
that's just how it is, period.
It was frustrating.
Well, it's good to look at it that way, because that's just how it is, period. The more luminous you're able to be imaginally, the more capable you become. Okay, the more you're able to accomplish, the more gravity to your life you can build up. Right. You understand? Because you're more luminous, you're more clear, you see things more clearly. And that luminosity in Theurgy happens to be a state of true existence that is what theurgically allows one to see deeply into things, the vision of things, right? The framework of things. In Kabbalah, there's this famous idea of going up certain points on the tree of life where you have a vision of the mechanics of the universe, right? Where suddenly you have this visual experience of something you can't really explain to other people, but it has to do with the way the world works and the way the universe works, at least from your point of view. You suddenly see some holistic way the entire mechanics of the universe are put together. Right? And people talk about that, right? You've probably had experiences like that. They're almost impossible to explain logically because you can't do it just by logic. It has to do with your intuitive nature, your intuitiveness of how things work, the mechanics of the universe, in the Kabbalah, in the tree of life, where it's at, of that vision is a place called Ascent, which is the moon. It's reflective. Your intuition is reflective. You're reflecting the intuition, right? It's a different kind of thinking. It's not the same as executive directive thinking. It's reflective, feminine to a degree, receptive, right? And the full moon,
women are blessed,
right? But the priestess in the tarot, okay, is the full moon, and that is a perfect reflection. And when you look at the small cards, I'll just give you a little bit more of a lesson. Peace is Libra in the moon. It's the moon in Libra, okay? So think about it. What is peace? Peace is reflecting perfect balance.
Right.
Okay, do you see how that formula works? And that's one of the guardians is peace, right? That's air. The two of swords.
The air?
Yeah, air is two of swords. And so two of swords in its alchemy, which again, guys, this is not something for this call. It's not this call, but not something for this training. You'll find way more about it if you go look at Rhoda on our website, Study Our Tarot. We break all of this down. But the two of swords is Libra in the moon. So the moon in Libra, okay? So what that means is a perfect reflection. What is the moon doing in its fullness? It's reflecting the sun.
It's reflecting the sun.
It's reflecting the sun. And it's purified reflection, perfectly balanced by Libra. Libra's cardinal air. And Libra's a very interesting sign because it's cardinal air, okay? Because it's balanced, right? You'd almost think it'd be fixed air, which would be the center, right? There's cardinal, fixed, and mutable, right? Okay. So you almost think it'd be the center, but that's Aquarius. So Libra's actually cardinal. So the highest mind is perfectly balanced, okay? The cardinal aspect of air, the highest mind is Libra, which is perfectly balanced, which is justice. It's Themis. It's on the tarot, it's Libra. And that's a greater arcana, which is the scales, perfectly balanced.
Right.
And the moon is the full and total absolute reflection of things, right? Which is the priestess.
So big balance.
Yeah, so if you're reflecting perfect balance, you're at peace.
Oh.
You understand that, guys? If I could give you any excitement about getting into the rest of our school stuff, because you're going to get this early. This whole experience that we're doing right here, you're going to get early. Some of the first things that you get access to once you've joined already. So, just like what we just explained, where the moon in Libra, reflecting perfect balance, Libra being cardinal, meaning it's the highest of mind. So the highest of mind is perfect balance. And if you're reflecting perfect balance, you're at peace. And the Two of Swords is peace. That's how these formulations work, these archetypes. So my point is that idea is eternal. Jared, it wouldn't matter if we're here, if we're aliens in another solar system, or if we're in another universe altogether. That principle never really goes away. It's not something that you have. Well, it's universal, which means it's everywhere. And it's eternal, meaning that it's always applicable, right?
Always exists.
Yeah, if you're reflecting the highest balance of any potential system, that would come out to the experience emotionally of peace. You would be at peace. Because you're at full acceptance of things. If they're in absolute balance.
Right. There's no conflict.
Yeah, you're at full acceptance of things because you're in perfect balance. That principle is eternal. It's infinite, right? Okay. It doesn't require Jared or Beto to exist. It exists by itself.
Right. And it will be felt by anything tapped into the subconscious, the God, the energy, everything that connects us.
Right. It's a form of that. Right. In other words, it's a shape. There's a shape to it.
So this comes back to the geometry aspects of how
it certainly can. And it's even just useful to just think shape. Because shape, just the word shape, just gives you this idea of formulating things, or almost like you're a sculptor. Sculpting, you're shaping. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just a good term to kind of understand. But guys, that's where you're headed when you're going through the 5 years, is you're dealing directly with these energies, doing things like invocations and banishings, and then grand invocations, which had to do with this, when you invoke the moon, you invoke Libra. And working with these energies and having visionary, luminous experiences of their eternal natures, which means you have access to the spiritual agency of their existence, because they are existent, they're real, they have a spiritual agency, a vastness to them. And so you're incorporating and you're invoking those energies, right? And so we're learning right now is the framework, which is the banishing ritual. Thereby, banishes, then goes to invocation, and then goes to grand invocation, which is where you start working your way through the school work that we have, which we give to you at a month at a time. And you work through 10-day deacon periods. Very simple, easy to do stuff. Don't think it's super involved. You just take 20, 30 minutes a day, maybe less, depending, to go through all the stuff we have for the full 5 years. I try to make sure that it was easy enough that for sure most people interested that would dedicate 20, 30 minutes a day could get through the whole 5-year program. So very excited about any of you wanting to do that. But anyways, that's kind of just explaining. Does that make sense now? So now when you see the Two of Swords, you're going to have an experience of a spiritual agency to that principle. So thereby, that card is now a living being to you. Do you understand? Like, I could hand it to you right now, and you'd see, oh, that's right, Moon in Libra. And it would trigger that principle, that spiritual agency, and you would go into it, whether you go in deeply or not. Right? You may go deeply, you may be just like, oh, yep, I remember that one. It could be simple. Right. You know what I mean? But it'll take you into the agency of its truth. You see what I'm saying? And then it becomes a living being. The tarot over time literally becomes a living being, right? And because you're experiencing the principles and the spiritual agency of its predicate truth one at a time, one card at a time. Does that make sense? And so it does become this living being, and it just becomes different to you than other.
Being or entity, or is that
beingness? You want to think beingness, because entity, you could say that the entirety of the megaverse is an organism. You could say that. That's that's entity. That's a way of kind of looking at it entity-wise. Okay. But you want to look at more as a spiritual beingness, okay, a being, okay, because does have a spiritual nature, and you could say it's an entity. And in earlier forms of Theurgy, I think it'd be more fair to just call it directly spirits, because that's what it is. You know, it's easy to say it's the spirit of X, right? But it has an agency to it, it's have a beingness to it. You can invoke that beingness. It's a real thing. It has an existence. It's eternal. It's a principle that is eternal, which means it has a spiritual vastness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, my brother. thank you for the second session. Guys, we're just completing. I'm just dropping him off at his car at this point, and we will continue this tomorrow.